Hello and welcome back to another Rush Duel Links video. Today we are taking a look at the new Rush Forbidden/Limited list that has just dropped. Now this is first thing in the morning for me, so you have to excuse my raspy voice, but today we have a lot to kind of talk about. We have predictions for this list. There's only really one card I can think of that I actually really want to see hit, and there are maybe some cards I think could come off of the list, but saying that, it's still a little bit awkward. So recently, we have just had the conclusion of the GRF Festival. So for those who don't know, that's the Goha Rush Festival. And that is basically the KC Cup, but for Rush Duel, which means we had a lot of people playing a lot of games in a very small space of time, as well as a lot of the better players all playing against each other. When you have some of the best players in the world just grinding a ladder against each other for hours on end, you start to really get an eye for what the meta is, what the problem cards are, and what needs to be fixed. Now, as far as we are aware, this is just Forbidden/Limited list update. This is not changing any skills. This isn't a skill rebalancing. So, although I think the biggest elephant in the room is probably Hell Tuning Invasion still being a little bit overtuned, we're not planning to see anything there. And talking about that deck, that being the Royal Rebels, I don't think any of the cards themselves are directly in the way, right? I don't think there's any big problems in the Royal Rebel deck, specifically like in the form of a card. I think it's literally just the skill is pretty good. I think if we were to hit something, it would probably be Shadow Buyer, but even then, I don't think it's necessary. And Shadow Buyer to 3 would basically really hurt the deck's consistency, and the whole point of including Shadow Buyer is to increase the deck's consistency, so it does feel a little bit awkward to do so. The other really strong decks at the moment are the Magnum Overlord deck with the Maximum Overload skill. Again, I don't think changing any of the cards themselves is going to really impact that deck outside of either completely killing it or just letting it completely be free. I think that is another one where we're going to have a skill rebalance if we really want to hit it, or just release more cards into the game that can help you deal with that problem. And speaking of Magnum Overlord, I think that is going to be a thing going forward, where any of these decks that can kind of just kill you out of nowhere are going to feel a lot stronger with 6,000 life points, and I think as we get future archetypes that also like to do that, things like Seven's Geas, when we go into the future and we get Eternal Galactica Oblivion, when we get the Cyber Dragons and we're running around with Power Bond and 8,000 attack Piercers and 5,600 attack Double Attackers, we're going to start to see those 6,000 life points really start to hurt. But looking at the other decks, I really don't think there's anything that needs a hit, right? Like specifically for like the in-art type cards, I think Thunder is in a good place. I think Harpies is okay. I think Cyburst probably needs a buff more than anything, so I would hate to see them take a hit. There isn't really much else like in the meta other than aggro. And aggro has always been in a weird spot because it's basically Dragius and friends, right? It's what cards best support Dragius. I wouldn't mind seeing that hit, but again, it's not easy to do so. But if we talk about the card that we really want to see hit, that card is Essel. So Essel is a very frustrating card because it's very unassuming a lot of the time. Essel is a card that a lot of the time will do literally nothing. And to a lot of people, they'll look at that and go, well, most of the time this card isn't doing anything, therefore it's fine. The problem is it's a very high roll card. If you go second and you open with it, you can drop it down, mill 2, and +1. That +1 is already pretty good because you can treat it like a Seahorse Carrier type effect, where you can just tribute off an extra monster, possibly get out 2 boss monsters on turn 1, which is pretty good. But you can also high roll with this card and mill into a boss monster and special summon that, or if your opponent for whatever reason has sent a boss monster to their graveyard, you can take one of theirs. Now, cheating out a boss monster this early sometimes is fine, right? Sometimes your opponent will just have the widespread, or they'll next turn use Hell Tuning Invasion and wipe your board, and it won't really be much of an issue. But a lot of times, it is very, very deterministic to how the game goes, and I think a lot of the time you can just win or lose off the back of an Essel mill if you get lucky enough. Now, I think the absolute best card to mill off Essel is still Multi-Strike Dragon Dragius, which means the best place for Essel, I think, would be Limit 3, just so that you cannot play it with Dragius, and that's basically what Limit 3 is, right? Limit 3 is the, please don't play this card with Dragius, and I think this does make sense, as well as the fact that it is, I think, It feels the most balanced in Thunder, and Thunder currently doesn't play any Limit 3s. Now, they have just recently gotten the Gazelle, but I think a lot of lists still aren't going to be playing that card, so Essel would make sense as the Limit 3 for that deck. So that is what I would like to see. I think Essel is very toxic for the game. It creates very unfun game states. It creates very one-sided landslides. It creates this like snowball mentality. And again, sometimes it does nothing, sometimes it just wins you the game, and I think that's really poor card design, in my opinion. It's literally so good that a card that should only be seen going second, as in you would like have it as a side deck card, in a mode where we only play best of ones, people are just main decking it because it's just that good. And I think that is a card that really needs to go. As for cards that I think could come off of the list, I think Dark Sword Magician probably could come off. I think realistically, nobody would bother playing Dark Sword Magician alongside the Limit 3 cards. Maybe I'm way off base here. Maybe there would be a new aggro build that would come out where people would be playing like 3 copies of Dark Sword and 3 copies of Dragius. But I think you always want to pair something with Dragius that can boost its own attack, because that's always been Dragius's weakness, is that it's kind of stuck at 2500. So that's why people have been playing Ancient Arise and Trigger Drago alongside it, because they can boost up their own attack, which lets them attack over threats that Dragius itself can't clear. So I don't think that would be that much of an issue. Other than that, I think realistically, we could take Clear Ice off the list. I think it was weird to me that they put it on the list in the first place. I don't think Ancient Forces was ever like the strongest deck in the game to begin with. So it felt really strange to me putting it on there and kind of killing a really cool deck that could only exist in Duel Links. I think taking that off would be really good, because now that means you could play it again with the Phoenix Dragon engine, or you could stick some Dragius in that deck and maybe it could do something. I think that deck is past its prime anyway, but even if you did release it, it would probably be fine. I can't really think of any other Limit 3 cards I would like to see specifically come off. I think there is maybe an argument for Acebreaker, but I do understand why they want to keep it on there, and that is just so you can't, again, play it with Dragius, and you could just play effectively machines, but with Dragius slotted in, and that would be a big problem. The only reason I'd like to see it come off is because it would be really nice to be able to play Magnum Overlord and Acebreaker in the same deck and have it kind of feel like this whole machine package. Obviously, the Maximum Overload skill would still not let you play Acebreaker, but it would still be cool just to be able to have all the machines in one deck, and I think it's a little bit underwhelming that we can't. But enough natter, let's click on and see what's going on with this list. So the Forbidden Limit list for both Rush and Speed Duels will be updated on April 4th with new cards added to the list. So let's take a look what we got here. Limited Sports Dragon Pitcher. Okay, I think this is fine. What does this mean? This means that you will be able to play 2 copies of this card along with Dragius in your deck. I think that's the biggest takeaway. This is basically going to be a buff towards the Dragonic Resonance list. I suppose you could also see this as a buff to Ancient Forces, but I don't think this is going to be a buff to much else. Sports Dragon Pitcher is a bit of an awkward card, where it specifically says that your level 6 and lower monsters cannot attack, so only your 7s are going to be able to attack, which is fine. I mean, most decks could probably use this card. It's just kind of a big-ish engine, I suppose. Overall, I'm not too shocked by this. I probably should have thought about this a little bit beforehand, actually, and just really realized that this card is capable of coming off the list, right? This wasn't even on my radar, so I think that's completely fine. Resonance and, well, I guess Resonance more than anything does feel like it is just a little bit shy of being where it really wants to be. I think it has all the tools it needs to succeed. It just doesn't find them very consistently, and maybe could do a little bit of a push. I don't know if this is going to be enough of a push, but I think Resonance could be pretty good. Right, let's see what's next. Limited to 3, so that's it for Limit 2. Okay with you. I hate that. So, King's Majesty is a defensive tool, right? It is used specifically as one of the only outs to Royal Rebels. It is used as the oftentimes only out to Magnum Overlord. So putting it on the Limit 3 list is basically saying if you still want to play this engine, you've got to take out one of your other Limit 3s, which feels horrid. I am an advocate for more defensive options, just because losing the game out of nowhere and having literally zero control over it feels like ass. So having King's Majesty limited feels really bad. Now, we only have one copy of this card, so this could be telling us in the future we're going to get more copies, and we don't want you to use 3 copies of this alongside 3 copies of anything else. In which case, okay, I kind of understand that. That would make a lot of sense. It's like one of the most powerful traps in the game. Having multiple copies of it would be pretty gross. But right now, we only have 1 copy of this card because it's a level up reward from Roa. So this feels kind of bad. Now, in the Royal Rebel deck itself, this now means that you have to play only 2 copies of Heavy Metal, which feels a bit weird. And then if we're playing this in, let's say, aggro, now we have to decide whether we're playing 3 Dragius or a copy of this. Yeah, I'm really not a fan of that. Especially since... Alright, if they hit Essel, I guess this is fine. We'll just take it as a dub. We'll take it as a dub. Again, I don't agree with this at all, unless it's future-proofing. But even then, for right now, that's going to suck. And then, no longer on list Clear Ice Dragon. Wait a minute. So there's no more Limit 3s. Which means Essel is untouched. Oh. Konami, what are we doing here, bro? No matter what, no matter if they do a skill rebalance, Essel is still going to be a problem. So we've basically ignored the most annoying card in the format. A card that is, by the way, seeing play in literally every deck that can include it. So it is seeing play in aggro, it's seeing play in Thunder, it's seeing play in Harpies, it's seeing play in Cyburst, it's seeing play in just about everything, except like decks that literally say they can't use it. So I really don't like this, unless they really think they're going to power creep it, but I think that's going to be difficult to do. I think this is Konami's way of saying they don't give a shit about Essel, and they're fine for it to just exist, and I strongly disagree. I think this... Right, let's talk about Clear Ice Dragon before we go into a tangent. Clear Ice Dragon is nice. I think this card never should have been limited in the first place. I think it felt a bit weird that it wasn't even... I don't think it was the best deck when it got hit. I think it was a very fun deck, a very competent deck, a very strong deck. It was probably still a tier 1 deck. I don't think it was the best deck, so I think it was a bit weird to hit it. But freeing Clear Ice is pretty cool. It has a bit of grave hate, which does kind of hurt King's Majesty in a lot of ways. It brings back the idea of playing the Ancient Forces skill, which again, still might be a little bit power crept at this point, but it's probably still fine. I think realistically, this is probably going to be an okay tier 2, tier 3 deck, and I'm actually looking forward to playing it again because I really did enjoy this deck. So that's all really cool. Really happy for that. And with this no longer being on the list, that means we can put back again the Phoenix Dragon, we can put back the Dragius, so we are quite happy to see that. Now, Essel not being hit really sucks. King's Majesty being hit really sucks. And then, yeah, we just have all the changes here. I am happy to see Sports Dragon Pitcher back. I'm happy to see Clear Ice Dragon back. I think those cards are really cool. I think hopefully that means Dragons will get to kind of rise in the meta a bit. I detest King's Majesty being hit, and I also really, really dislike Essel not being hit. This feels, in my opinion, right, I'm not going to say like I'm speaking for the whole community, because obviously I'm not. In my opinion, this feels a little bit tone deaf. It feels like no one at Konami actually played the event and saw how much dominance Essel had over it. And again, Essel can be unassuming just because, again, a lot of people will play this card and be like, I played 20 games with Essel in my deck and it never did anything. And that just completely ignores the fact that other people have played the card, immediately milled a really strong boss monster and just won the game off it. So I really am not a fan. I'm also not the biggest fan of cards that you can just slot into any deck and just have them be really, really powerful. Now, I think you could make the argument King's Majesty is that, but I think we needed something. We desperately need something to just not randomly die to OTKs, and the biggest annoyance of that is probably Magnum Overlord. Just hard draw the max, slap it down, smack in, dead. King's Majesty is literally the only card that will save you, unless it's a direct attack, and now we have the guard that can save you. But if it's not a direct attack, which a lot of the time it won't be, you're still just going to die anyway. So, I overall am not very happy with this list. I'm really not very happy with this list. But it's what we've got. I am still, though, very excited to try out the Ancient Forces and the Dragonic Resonance and see how they feel in the current meta. We're just going to have to see how this goes going forward, I suppose. So, thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you next time.